for.
Yeah, I suppose.
Those are the most popular channels, right? The life advice ones or makeup tutorials. I think it's a
Not
mix
the
of
most
makeup
popular,
tutorials.
but they're definitely up there.
Well, I was thinking that what I should do to really make Datapad take off is turn it into a mix of Star Wars lore and makeup tutorials.
Mm.
So, like, I'll do like mascara tutorials while talking about the Battle of Endor and stuff.
So like, you have a date with a moody Jedi who's probably gonna kill you. Try this, or did you just have a date? Try this concealer.
You'll have to be more specific. That's too many Jedi.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Did I linked you the notes, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Are we live?
We are live.
Okay. Yes, I've got the notes. I've got a water in hand. I've got a Star Wars wiki open in front of me in case I forget anything.
Wow, you just see, I don't even watch the show. I just read the Wikipedia article.
Yeah.
Right, you ready?
Yep.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome to Tapcaf Transmissions, our Star Wars podcast, which is, in fact, the only Star Wars podcast. There's not even an idea for another one out there. Isn't that crazy, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty new on this train. There might be some followers, so if you see another Star Wars podcast, definitely let them know that it's kind of weird that they copied us. The original Star Wars podcast.
Well, I think we have the legal rights to it, so we can't, like, no one else can do it.
Right.
I don't like that you've actually kind of backslid from this podcast hardline position that there are no other Star Wars podcasts to acknowledging that they might exist, but they're ripping us off. Like, it seems like you're just giving up too much ground here.
I'm just acknowledging that, people like to copy what's right, basically.
Well, joining me, as always, is my co-host and friend, Mr. Justin EckhartsLadder. And then I'm probably not going to say your last name.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
I don't want to be doxxed.
Again?
Yeah, again. Thanks, Charlie. Yeah, I hope everything is going well with you, Corey. How's your week been?
My week has been good. As you just saw, I've been planning the new apartment layout with my girlfriend because we finally got a place that doesn't have roaches like this place does. So that's going to be cool.
They did all the planning before, so.
Yeah, like, I'm going to be going from a situation where my life is, like, fully set up and I'm looked after by these roaches to having to fend for myself. And I just don't know what I'm going to do. But what's been up with you since we last spoke?
Not really very much. We finished Gus's room as well, so we did a bit of home decorating. Gus moved into his big boy room with a big boy bed. So he's been sleeping in that every night, doing pretty well. Second night he moved in, I forgot to lock his bedroom door, so he woke up at like 6:30, rolled out of bed, walked up to the door, opened it, walked around the living room for about a minute and a half, went back to bed, closed the door, and went to sleep. So that could have been way worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could have been a disaster.
My sister called me this morning, and her oldest son is, I think, a year older than Gus, and he's figured out, like, the front door lock now. So that's a big step. And yeah. I guess calling me was his idea, but then, like, after 5 minutes on the phone or on FaceTime, he got bored and wanted to go for a car ride, so he just ran to the front door and started, like, trying to pull it open.
Jesus. Yeah, Gus doesn't know locks yet. He's starting to learn, like, he kind of knows the turn ones, like the easy ones. But Murphy knows how to open the gate on the top of the stairs. He pushes it in with his nose, pulls up, and then pulls back, and he defeats the lock. Not very epic for that.
We're so domestic. What is this?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I'm trying to think if there's anything else interesting that happened. I think that's pretty much it. Actually, I do have one announcement. I tweeted at Michael Stackpole today because I forgot to do it at the end of last episode about that Aesir thing. And he said he couldn't remember, but he's going to get back to me because I sent him the specific passage from Dark Tide.
But yeah, so for anyone who doesn't remember from last week, we were talking about how Aesir in Isard's Revenge kind of faked her own death and wanted to like kind of change Bothan society from inside. And then there's a bit in Dark Tide where Trace Crefay, a Bothan admiral, is talking about one of his instructors at the Bothan Martial Academy. And
he said that he had an instructor who pointed out certain flaws in the way Bothan society functions.
So yeah.
Probably
big moves are being made.
Meant it at the time. But yeah, maybe he'll get back to us. Also, I was talking to Alex from Star Wars Explained, and tentatively he will be joining us for not the first episode of Alphabet Squad, but Shadow Wing.
Shadow Fall?
Shadow Fall? Is that?
I think it's Shadow Fall. But yeah, so this episode today is about the second volume of the original Star Wars Clone Wars series, cartoon thing. And next week we're going to be talking about Alphabet Squadron, the first book, and then we'll figure out where we're going from there. And we're kind of planning to schedule Shadowfall around whenever Alex is available, as long as he's able to.
Probably 3 weeks, I think, from today.
Yeah, so then after that we might get a little bit weird with the way we schedule stuff, because I've got my move coming up after that, and then you've got other major upcoming events towards the end of the year. So we'll probably be covering more comic books for the last part of the year, just because it's a bit easier for us to work around our schedule. Well, Justin in particular is going to be incredibly busy, but we want to make sure we stay
on that note,
mostly present.
People always look at Kelsey, because what he's referring to is my wife is we're having a second kid.
My wife is having a kid.
I've also put on some weight from eating a lot of takeout and not getting as much exercise during coronavirus. No one ever acknowledges the life that I might be carrying inside me as well.
Worms?
No, just
like a
cheeseburger baby.
I think it's more likely to, if you're growing life inside, you would probably be a tapeworm then.
Well, maybe not biological life, but
I'm trying to set you up here for the other announcement of what's going on tonight.
Oh yes, we will be playing some Worms with our friend Charlie and Mark from the Templin Institute, and I think Julia as well, one of our friends and Mark's friends. So if you want to tune in for that later, you can.
Yeah. So
I've never played Worms before, not a single Worms game.
It is a lot of fun. Cool. But we'll get back to you guys on which comic series we're planning to do. We're definitely going to be taking a couple weeks off when new baby arrives. And then we talked about maybe Tales, maybe Legacy, maybe even Rogue Squadron or Crimson Empire. So there's a lot of options. And we do plan on doing comics at some point. This just seems like a good place for us to kind of slot it in, keep the podcast rolling along without having quite the same commitment as some of the books take. Because it's a lot
of work. Like, it doesn't seem like reading one book every week or every couple of weeks would be a lot of work, but like, we're very busy people. It adds up. It really does.
We're very busy, very lazy people. And
well, we're not lazy, but like, our jobs are kind of bullshit, let's be honest. So we should be able to get books in there more easily, but
yeah. But it's not just that we're reading that book. Usually we're reading that book and then reading some other books in the middle of that for other lore videos. So it's a lot of Star Wars book reading that happens. And I always feel weird about like pulling too many topics from the thing we're doing for Datapad. I
just did a breakdown of the Battle of Q-Trick on EckhartsLadder.
Yeah, and I honestly lost a lot of respect for you when I saw that, because that was from Isard's Revenge. So
yeah, fair enough. Thankfully, your respect doesn't mean very much to me. All right, let's continue and talk about volume 2 of the Clone Wars. It's actually season 3. This one is a lot different than the seasons in volume 1, because instead of having very short episodes, we have 5 like 10 to 15 minute episodes. And I actually preferred this style, I think.
See, I didn't actually notice that much of a difference as far as that goes, because like watching them how we did, I assume we probably watched the same video again, where it cuts out any sort of episode transitions. But the length of each scene kind of still matched up to how it did in volume and season 1 and 2, where I could see them having made kind of the same style, like cutting them at different places and releasing them as the episodes in the same way. Like, I don't think that had too much of an impact really on the style of what we got.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess I only really noticed it with like the whole Grievous chase of Palpatine, because that was like a bit more of a long kind of single storyline than we got in volume 1. But you're right, besides that, because even like certain episodes, like the one where they land on that planet, it has like very short sequences that could have almost been episodes. Like it shows like the Kashyyyk scene, and then there's the Ortolans and whatever else. So yeah, you're right, the way they filmed it kind of not that different. Anything else that you noticed that was or wasn't different from season 1? One thing that I did was they bring a lot more, like this was clearly made closer to episode 3. It was in 2005, so we're starting to see episode 3 vehicles, which was kind of cool. Like there's Venators and whatnot, whereas it was always Acclimators in volume 1. So I thought that was cool. How about you?
Yeah, like the timeline progression was nice, but because I like Venators more than Acclimators. It's a controversial take, but it's my take.
Is that controversial?
No, it's actually probably something that almost everyone thinks.
I was gonna say,
but stylistically, I didn't see too much of a difference in how a lot was handled. But like in terms of actual content, one of the things that I talked about last time that kind of I didn't like about the first volume was that the Anakin and Obi-Wan were like too kind of tense and didn't have any sort of friendship. But in this one, they felt a lot like their relationship felt a lot more like what I was expecting from season 1 even. And I get that they're trying to show this progression for them, but at the same time, they'd already been working together for 10 years. Anakin had grown up with Obi-Wan. And like we do see in episode 2 that they have tension throughout the prequel trilogy, but they're still friends in episode 2 already. So that was kind of jarring in the first one. And I think their relationship in this, where there's still some moments of conflict, but it matches better with the idea we get in episode 3 of like Obi-Wan like playing with his mustache, and that means something to Anakin about what they're going to do, and they just have this kind of tongue-in-cheek, fun secret code for causing mayhem.
Yeah, I like that too. Although at the very beginning they were kind of right back into the fighting, but they got through that pretty quickly. And by the end, Obi-Wan more just seems concerned than anything else. And my very last note is Anakin, the hand is black now, not epic. Anakin redoes his metal hand, and like he completely missed the drug-induced cave drawings. Don't do that.
There is something you brought up that really stood out to me, and I thought would be a bigger deal for you. You mentioned the Ortolans, and it looks like they had arms and legs. So
yeah, there's other things that have given them arms and legs as well. Like, there's been a Star Wars comic, and it's disturbing. There's no two ways about it. Like I can't let Gus watch this now because it is disturbing to see them misshapen like that. Ortolans are those blue elephants, and basically there's a big conspiracy theory. If you look up Dark Secret Jabba's Palace, you should be able to find it. But maybe wait till like it's bright out, because it's a bit troubling. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, we don't want to do too much on it on this podcast, because then we'll probably attract the attention of the story group, and they're going to shut us down. So
yeah, we already are not getting invited to Star Wars Celebration, as we've discussed.
Yeah, they actually. So I've heard through the grapevine that the reason there's no Star Wars Celebration this year is because, as the only Star Wars podcast, if it was happening, they would have felt compelled to invite us. And they wanted to avoid the public backlash. So yeah, like you guys didn't hear it from
Kathleen
me.
Kennedy probably invented COVID, to be honest.
Don't even fucking. There are people who will believe that.
Yeah. So I realized why I thought it wasn't Kakruk at the battle, because he appears to die.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought it was a different Whippet, but I guess he just doesn't die.
No, he's napping actually in that scene.
Yeah. So that's kind of sad.
What, you want Kakruk to die?
I guess that Grievous just is so sloppy.
So this is actually something that came up as a question in the last episode that we're probably in a much better place to talk about now. We said we'd talk about Grievous a lot more this episode. Is like people being upset that like Grievous was too cartoony or like not competent enough in the other Clone Wars or even in Revenge of the Sith compared to what he's like in this. So do you have any thoughts on that first?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are some differences. Like, one thing, Grievous, like, in the Clone Wars TV show, The Clone Wars, he is very aggressive, but whenever he's outnumbered, he immediately runs away. That's kind of his thing. Like, he's really creative and hard to nail down. They always kind of get him in a corner, but he somehow escapes. And that's kind of the difference here. Like at that first, where are they again with that? Is it
Hypori?
Hypori. He's kind of surrounded by clones and he fights them off. And same with later on, he's much more aggressive and certainly much more competent than he is in the Clone Wars TV show. I'll say that.
So there's a scene in this volume where he's training with Dooku, and they do try to make it so that like, or try to reference the idea that like one of your greatest weapons is going to be retreat. And Dooku kind of tells him this, but we don't see him do that in this show. Like, I think a lot of that just comes from the fact that everything that everyone can do in this show is so over the top. And
yeah, you're not wrong.
I think it even with the story they're trying to tell with what limited dialogue there is, it seems like they were trying to get in that thing about like Grievous is going to like he should be leaving. And he shouldn't be fighting like 18 people at once. And I think it works better having him be more running and hiding and then striking when he feels like he can actually do it. And again, it seems like something that they were trying to put forward with this. It seems like that was the intent in Revenge of the Sith that they were trying to tie this into. So I think a lot of the thing where like, oh, he used to be so powerful just sort of comes from the fact like everyone in this show does ridiculous nonsense all the time. And if you want to talk about him being like incompetent cartoon villain, he gets his cape tied to a train which drives off with him in this. True. That is the dumbest thing that ever happens to Grievous in anything. And
there are a lot of Grievous is actually really funny in those scenes, like when he's popping his head down. Like that one scene where they're on the elevator and he's got his head popped down and like the clone trooper just like loads his rocket launcher. Like that's legitimately funny. I really enjoyed that.
When he's Naruto running down the wall.
Yeah. And even when they're in their office and like Palpatine's got his back towards the window and Grievous just kind of sticks his head down. Like that was legitimately pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, there's is it when the Ithorian Jedi is doing the bellow thing that he like pops his head inside himself and his arms inside himself and he looks like a tube.
He's like vibing.
I was trying to think about what that would have looked like if he did that in Revenge of the Sith, because I don't think his anatomy actually can work that way.
Not really.
It looked ridiculous.
Yeah, totally. He's a fun character. I like him in this. I really like his proper voice a lot more though. His voice in this is very silly.
He does sound very just evil McBad guy.
Exactly.
Generic evil McBad guy. Like he sounds like evil McBad guy in Revenge of the Sith, but he's also got like the like he sounds like droid enhanced organic person. Like it fits who he is better in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So anything else you want to talk about that opening battle? I liked how the Lats actually do something because it seems like most of the time Lats exist solely to be shot down with clones inside of them. But in this, they actually kind of just chilling and they drop off Fordo in the Ark. So I'm pretty sure it was Fordo. And Yeah, they take like a whole squad of battle droids coming, which I
Yeah.
thought was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Really
my only
nice.
thing with that was like Coyote Mundi is just super gung ho and wants to go after Grievous, and he's really aggressive. And then the clones are like,
Yeah.
"Nah, Chief, this ain't it." But
This ain't it. Like he'll kick your ass, like for sure.
yeah, it just seemed like there was a few places where the clones were telling the Jedi what to do when they're supposed to be these order following, especially at this point in the development of the Clone Wars. This was when they were kind of at their most bio-droidy.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Yeah, for
"No,
sure.
General, stop it." But I guess Fordo never really fit into that quite as much. And then I just thought it was really funny, the scene when he's looking at the... I guess there's a full medical bay in the lat, but
It's like,
he looks at Ayla, and then he looks down. It's like, were you not aware that she was there too? He looks surprised to see that...
you just saw everyone get his ass kicked. Like,
Yeah.
Shaggy got jumped on. Like, he got goombud.
So, consider there was, 5 or 6 of them there?
Yeah.
Ayla, was it Shakti?
Yeah.
Ayla, Shakti, Coyote Mundi, and Kakruk all survive. So really, in the Hypori duel, Grievous only kills Shaggy and the other human Jedi, who no one knows. So really, like, how much did he accomplish? He stole Kakruk's
cool,
lightsaber.
But other than that, like, yeah. Didn't do a whole lot, did he?
No.
He kills 3. It says Dakman Barrick. Oh, that's the one who he kills earlier, I think. And then he kills Shaggy, and then Tarsier. Yeah, that's the one with like the wrap on his head. But yeah.
So there was something I noticed that was a huge flaw in the CIS's military strategy in this whole volume, and even in the last volume, that I think really helps explain how they lost the war. None of them ever actually shoot anyone. And I think this is a huge flaw when you're trying to be a military in a war. They shoot around people, never hit anyone.
Oh, they also do a lot of walking, like the super battle droids with their arms in front of them, like up, like wrist out. Not shooting, just like we can shoot in 5 arm movements if you're not careful. But you're right. The Jedi and the clones, on the other hand, are ultra efficient. We have that one scene where Fordo, like that really badass scene where he kills like 6 super battle droids, like expends his rifle, then he takes out his pistols, and like
one of the most famous Star Wars gifts that goes around the most.
Totally. It kind of didn't hit me too. Like, it's obvious, but I kind of forgot that Anakin was still a Padawan for most of this too, and for all of Volume 1. So by the time, because he like has, even as a Padawan, a lot of responsibility. I mean, he's not supposed to chase Ventress, but he does, you know?
Yeah. And he has a duel off screen with Ventress again, because she's not dead. But
he has missions in various Game Boy games and comics and whatever else too, where he's basically on his own. Like, he duels Dooku a few times, doesn't he?
Yeah. Like, there's actually a considerable time jump between Battle of Hypori and when he gets his ponytail cut off. Like, this show presents it as being a lot closer together, and who knows how intentional it was at the time, or how much it was just like a retcon with Labyrinth of Evil. But Labyrinth of Evil is kind of all about yeah. So
mazes of evil,
whole mazes. Yeah. Jedi Trial is about his Jedi trial, the trial of courage, of strength, of the flesh, I think, which I think is like he goes to a brothel and
don't like that. Anakin, boners are against the will of the Force. That's what Kiadi Mundi was checking for when he was in the hospital bed. He's a weirdo.
Don't like that.
Isn't Kiadi Mundi the one that can have sex? Because he's a Siren, and they... Is that Kiadi Mundi?
Yeah, I think he has a few wives. What? Actually, no. Is it Coyote or is it Kit Fisto? I don't think it's Kit Fisto because of the whole Ayla thing. But
yeah. Like all Sirens, Mundi practiced polygamy due to his 1 to 20 male to female ratio. Got him. Although I think I forget, I think it was a new canon book. It might have been the Thrawn Treason, where Anakin says that sex is technically not. It is okay for Jedi to have sex. It's just like
they can't enjoy it.
Well, they can enjoy it, but they can't, fall in love with their partner.
Yeah. The Jedi is an order of one-night stands. Mm-hmm. I think we've talked about this before on the podcast. There was something about one-night stands in Jedi that turned into a whole thing for a few episodes.
Oh, you're talking about when Corrin banged a sea otter, I think.
No, it may have been about Corrin, because everything is about Corrin, but I don't think it was specifically about him banging otters. Mm-hmm. Though now this has come up on every episode, so...
Yeah.
And if my cousin is watching... I
saw an otter at the zoo the other day, and I was like, if Corrin was here, that fence would need to be a little bit taller. Reinforced.
No fence would keep Corrin Horn out.
Yeah. Or just... But well, I mean, a lot of fences would, because you can't use telekinesis, so... Just put the lock on the inside, and there's nothing he can do.
Wow. Just baiting him like that?
The sexiest otter. We searched the globe to find the sexiest otter. But you've got to use your telekinesis to get in.
I don't know why I'm picturing a game show of that now, hosted by Adam Groh.
I can imagine it, like, hosted by Charlie, maybe.
You're right.
Yeah. Do you think at 25 years worth of Jedi debraiding ceremonies, like a Padawan's ever like lost an ear or some shit?
Yoda just gets distracted.
Well, I mean, they go pretty close to the ear, and there's like some Jedi have like pretty strange biology, like one slip and the earlobe's gone.
Well, what do they do for a Padawan braid for species that don't have hair?
There must be something like...
Do they just tape on like pin the tail on the Padawan or something? They turn into a thing, get all the younglings to come in, blindfold them, and then just right on.
Yeah, you have to chop your arm off. It's really unfair. Super humanocentric.
So was the thing with the cave something that actually happened? Was that a vision Yoda was having? Was that his fan fiction about Anakin and Qui-Gon? It's like the second scene is like, when in episode 1 was there time for this? Why would Yoda go hide on Dagobah if this is just a regular Jedi thing?
I was thinking maybe it could have been on Naboo before they met the Gungans. But like, Qui-Gon looks fucking weird. I put a picture on Twitter. I'll link it in the chat. For those who don't know of what Qui-Gon looks here, I tweeted it and said, "Holy shit, LMAO," and I just put it in chat there because, like, Qui-Gon looks like he could smell you like before he's like saw you, basically.
Okay, well, let's not be mean about people's noses.
Well, it's not. He doesn't have a nose like a human though, so like no human is gonna see that and think that nose looks like theirs, because it's just... It also looks like in that picture he's saying, "Don't talk to me or my son ever again."
I will find you and I will kill you.
Liam Neeson is kind of a strangely like proportioned man, very tall, big old hands, like kind of a...
I wouldn't say he's strangely proportioned, because he could beat the shit out of me.
Oh yeah, I would think it, but I wouldn't say it. But I love Liam Neeson. Actually,
he's great.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
He's in several good movies too.
Yes, at least a few.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sometimes because of him.
Yep.
But yeah, like
Taken. Taken's not a good... Well, you know what? The original Taken's a pretty good movie. And
yeah, Taken is fine. And then Taken's 2 through 7... Get some better security, maybe shoot off a text once in a while. Let each other know where you are.
Did you see that scene in Taken 3 where it's Liam Neeson jumping over a fence and there's literally like I'm not exaggerating, there's 13 different shots in there. It's like just so many cuts because Liam Neeson's like 70. So
yeah,
it's like you can't convincingly have him jumping over a fence. 68, yeah, so...
Yeah, I regrettably watched I think every Taken movie.
The second one was okay. The first
I
one,
barely
I
remember
used to
anything
really enjoy
other than the first one. Like, all of it kind of melds together for me, and I don't know. But maybe that'll be a topic for a future Tapcaf, where we just watch all the Taken movies.
Right after we do our Avatar watch through.
Exactly.
I've had that stupid fucking tunnel song stuck in my head, Secret Tunnel, you know?
Secret Tunnel.
Yeah, I've had that stuck in my head for probably a week. Like, I was singing it all last night when I was streaming Fall of the Republic when I killed most of our Jedi, including Anakin, the Chosen One.
Yep. Good job on that.
But not Yoda, not the truly most useful one, at least.
As long as I have my vision, I'm happy, so.
Yes. But yeah. It's awful.
So, it's been established by this point that the cave on Dagobah was because Yoda murdered a Dark Jedi there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
one of multiple bit fashy Dark Jedi.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of them running around at a certain time. That's why Yoda had to deal with them.
At least two, on that planet. But yeah, right.
So famously, this Clone Wars, actually, canonical inconsistencies were only introduced by the 2008 Clone Wars series.
That's true, yeah.
There was nothing wrong in Star Wars before then, famously, so clearly this was...
Yeah, it's crazy how you can actually see Cornhorn's 10-year-old father running around the battlefield.
While Corran is being born.
Yeah. It's right behind Shaggy. When Shaggy gets squished, you can see Cornhorn there.
Wasn't me.
Just as a baby. Yeah.
But Fami on Hapori. Wasn't me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you again. So you're about to point to some...
No, I pointed to one, and then I feel like that makes my point. That's all that needs to be said.
You think so what do you think was going on with the cave then? Was it...
I don't know. I think it was intended to be a thing that they did, but when an episode was like, we must get to Coruscant, but first, we're going over here.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been before they met the Gunningans, because it did look kind of swampy. Like, I don't know. I don't get the point of that. It might have just been a vision. Like,
I think they were trying to establish it as like the cave is this thing that Jedi go and do, and that's part of their early trials, and Yoda was reflecting back on that. But like, why would Yoda hide? I mean, why would Obi-Wan hide next to fucking Anakin's stepbrother? That just seems bad. And why would they hide their kid there? That seems bad. Like, maybe they think, oh, Vader's not going to go check there, but it seems like, hey, you have one known family member. And then, I mean, why would Yoda hide it? Yeah. Essentially what is part of their Jedi training program. But whatever.
Yeah, the wiki says that it's a vision of if Qui-Gon had survived, but like, there's no...
Okay, so they're still intended to... Even if we take that at face value, they're still intended to go...
Yeah.
That's just a Jedi thing that happens at a cave that only becomes dark side later.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Makes no sense.
I just don't know why it's there.
Yeah. It doesn't even really help anything. Like, it doesn't do anything for the story, even. Like, even if it wasn't broken.
Yeah. Like, maybe if they showed what Anakin saw inside, that would have...
Right.
But...
So, there's another cave. Both the Clone Wars and this show have Anakin kind of having a vision of the future. I actually quite like this one more. I think in the Clone Wars, it's during the Mortis arc. So, of course, he forgets it. And it's like a literal vision of the future. But I'm actually really much prefer this one.
Me too.
Where it's obviously like a legend, but it's telling Anakin's story, but it's not like clearly Anakin. Like, it's a really simple analogy, but it's still, or a simile, but it's not a... You know, it's not like so on the nose like it sometimes is.
Yeah, that was a cool scene showing how the Nelvon people have like LCD displays on their rocks. That was pretty epic.
That was a really dark plot too. Like the Techno Union, like biological experimentation and stuff. Like, and it's pretty gross. Like, they completely transformed them into these beasts and like meld guns and technology onto them, and then they go back, and it's like, listen, the wives accepted them back into the colony, but those guys are never getting any of that.
Well, it's basically meant to represent like high school football players.
Okay, I played high school football.
Yeah,
and you're completely right.
And you were talking about your cheeseburger baby earlier, so.
I played high school football, and we used to have this one drill. Our coach was he was a cop, and he was an absolute bastard. And the drill was stand there. This is not exaggerating. This is 100% a real thing. Stand there with your arms by your side, and the other player would run at you and try to knock you down. And you weren't allowed to defend yourself. And usually it would be like helmet on helmet contact. And I was on the O line and the D line. I wasn't very big. I was a good D lineman, but I was only probably like 170 or 180. And the other guy in the D line, one of the other guys, he ended up playing the CFL, and he like, even in high school he was like 6'5", and like I actually think that's part of the reason why I have a really bad memory now.
Yeah, that just seems like asking for people to get concussions.
Yeah, I got a few like I was actually scared to go to football practice. And so like so were the other O linemen, like my buddy Mike. There was one time where he basically faked an injury. And like I can't even blame him at all. Like,
yeah.
But games were fun. I loved playing in the games, but like the concussions, and I don't know if I'm gonna let Gus play high school football, because it's probably not even worth it, to be honest. It's great, it's fun, the team stuff is the best, but fucking injuries, man.
Yeah. Like when I considered going outside as a kid, I thought about playing like soccer maybe, but football was always, no, I'm just going to get trampled. I've always been kind of smaller, and especially in high school, I think I was like, for most of high school, I started high school at like 95 pounds.
Jesus Christ.
And I finished maybe 110, 115.
Are you actually that light? How tall are you?
I'm 5'10", 5'11".
And you were that skinny. I dated a girl.
I wasn't. I was much shorter at the start of high school, but
yeah, fair enough.
Like when I was working at McDonald's, I think I was 125 to 130, and I've probably gained 25 pounds since then, because that's when I started doing YouTube, and it's just literally sitting all day. But I'm about 155 now, 160 maybe.
Gotcha.
So I've always been easily crushable.
Like I used to like the games because, and when I used to play in the D line, which is basically like you run at the quarterback, my coach would always give me like, they'd tell you like you've got, like you can take 3 penalties in this game if it means you get an extra hit on the quarterback.
Yeah.
And like I used to love doing that stuff. Like, to love going like hitting people like away from the play who weren't paying attention, and that's what they teach you to do, but it's like, not fucking worth it. Like it's not. Looking back, it's so fucked up.
Yeah. Do you think Anakin would have played football?
Oh, absolutely. No, Anakin.
I think he's more hockey. Guy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's the hair. It's the hair, right?
Yeah, Anakin would be like the one. Like he'd be the horror, like on girls' Snapchat, like hitting people up and really hard to get away from. And everyone knows those guys, and they're not cool.
A team. I think he'd probably play for Tampa Bay. I don't know why. It just seems like it fits.
My sister went to high school with Nathan McKinnon. I don't know if you know who he is.
No.
He's like one of the best hockey players, but yeah, there's some horror stories about those guys. Not Nathan McKinnon in particular, but like just there's a lot of hockey players around here, and they do give off kind of a Anakin vibe because they're all very arrogant because they're way too famous and they're 16. They don't know how to handle it.
My brother-in-law's cousin was like drafted, and yeah.
I mean, I love hockey, but it's not good. Like, honestly, anything that can give a kid an ego at 16 is like not great, because that's what a lot of kids are. The second they get like that, it's just not good. Anyway, we're super off topic.
What did you think about the old gross rat?
I thought he was pretty gross. He looked like that one that showed up in my house. That
Yeah, like my note for that was just sick Wilbur on him.
Yeah, he's pretty gross. I'd rather be one of those janked up monsters than a nasty old Master Splinter looking bitch.
He kind of reminded me of K Quad in NJO, which we'll get to. I don't think I'm going to remember by then to make the comparison, but I was just waiting for him to like perv on the fact like it's just this old gross dude and all the women of the colony that are there and the children. But
yeah, not good. What did you think about the new clones? Because we kind of get the version of the phase 2s in this, and they look very. I didn't really like them that much, to be honest. They were a bit too stormtroopery, and clearly because this came out before Revenge of the Sith, right?
Yeah, it was like a year because it was May 15th for Revenge of the Sith, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this was like, I think exactly a year before then that the episode
came out in 2005.
Wasn't it 2005 or 6?
I think Revenge of the Sith came out in 2005.
No, you're probably right because then Empire at War was 2006. But yeah, so I think it was coming out leading up to Revenge of the Sith's release. So it was all made. So they knew what they were going to do. And they had to make toys for it.
Yeah.
It was probably only a few weeks difference between the final episode.
So it came out in March and then the movie came out in May.
Yeah.
Because we do see like most of the designs from the movie are in this. We get Tri-Droids, we get ARC 170s, we get the kind of new clones, we get General Grievous, of course. It's kind of cool how they actually collaborated like that, because obviously work would have been done on this much earlier, and we know that like they were scared to do anything with like the episode 9 plot because they were scared it was going to leak, and then the whole thing leaked like 6 months before the movie came out anyway.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that they actually collaborated like that.
Yeah, and I mean there were kind of things going on with that with Resistance more with I think TLJ, but and a bit with Rise of Skywalker, but I don't think anyone actually watches Resistance, which is kind of unfortunate because like the bit I've seen I've enjoyed, but I haven't even watched it.
It's okay. Yeah, I watched a bit of it. But like an example for me would be The Rise of the Resistance, or no, what was the book called? Resistance Reborn, I think. And it was like they clearly just had to work off of the trailer. You know what I mean? Because it's like the whole book, it's like about getting allies for the New Republic, and basically or the Resistance, and all I really get is this CR90, which is in the movie. Yeah,
and a million instances of that cloned on screen, and that's how you get the next Resistance fleet.
Yeah, exactly. What about the Battle of Coruscant? How'd you feel about that?
Before we get to Coruscant, because I think that's going to be most of the rest of the show. Is the planet that rainy that they just like Anakin and Obi-Wan? Anakin's eating a bunch of bugs, which is disgusting, and just like slurps up a worm. He didn't need to do it that way. I didn't need to see that. Is that planet ever identified? Because I don't think I wasn't able to find what it was. And to me, it kind of looked like Rhodia or Nukov because of the whole like domed city, but that's just a defensive shield, so it's unlikely to be those. But. Yeah.
No, I don't know. That's interesting.
My main takeaway from that battle was there were two things from all those like different war scenes that I kind of got, because that's what most of the second chapter was just Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting through different battlefields. Not too much to talk about there, but one was that the homing spider droids could walk up walls, which they seem like the most unstable things in the world.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
And the other was that, sure, they infiltrated the thing and brought down the shield, but then Anakin and Obi-Wan are just walking away when the actual invasion is happening.
Yeah, like that's like step one. Like there's a lot more shit to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a kind of a cool idea. And when they're swimming, when they were in the sewers, I was like, clearly you have to swim there. Have you not played a video game? There's like, you're in water and there's rocks. Like, clearly you go underneath. But yeah.
I really want to know what video games are like in Star Wars, but that's probably
Anakin's got
topic
that
for
like
different stuff.
PSP in Revenge of the Sith. It's kind of funny actually. They do mention Ben Skywalker has I forget what they call it. Like they call it like some sort of games for one of his devices. It talks about that in Fate of the Jedi or Legacy of the Force, I think.
That'd make a cool
I think
video topic.
I think he plays it when he's with the GAG, like on his downtime, if I remember correctly.
Right. Okay. I like how the Battle of Coruscant starts with like Yoda just opening the curtains and being shocked that there's all these droids already there.
Yeah, like, look, I don't know. Is that honestly like the best Coruscant defense like system? Yoda looking out a window. There's like, okay, we could have scanners set up in space. We could have ships patrolling, or we could
have a planetary shield that stops you from doing this.
Yeah, or we have Yoda looking out a window.
Like if he just hadn't done that, would they have noticed the invasion going on?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I gotta say I didn't really like Coruscant. Like I liked the battle, but I thought the actual Coruscant depiction was kind of boring, especially compared to what we get in the Clone Wars, where you see lots of the planet. And this was kind of just like it looked just like a planet with like skyscrapers.
Yeah, and I think the reason, for me at least, the other planets in the first volume got developed, like, they had at least a clear identity that didn't really exist for any of them in this one. Like, Bomis Cori just kind of looked like Munilinst copied and pasted, to the point that I usually think that place is Munilinst whenever I saw those scenes before. Nilvan is just, there's nothing really special to that. It's just probably... It's indistinguishable from Ilum in the first one, other than the cave. But the rainy planet that they never bothered to identify anywhere was just rainy planet, kind of like a shitty copy of Yavin almost from the first one. And Coruscant was just like maybe a couple roads, and you can't even really, in like a train, it's all really focused close in on people. There's not any real environment building there, but...
Yeah, you don't even get like the kind of idea of there being like big canyons or like a underworld or anything. It looks like just built on a city, or built like it's just a random city with lots of tall buildings. Kind of disappointing.
Yeah. I did like the chase scenes though. Like I liked most of the actual battle except for one part of the space battle. I think the Sesitin boarding is just ridiculous. Like the most ridiculous, over the top, boiled down, condensed version of
Mace Windu breaking he breaks in a vulture droid like a fucking horse.
Yeah, that's something else too, but I don't think that quite measures up to the same level. But there's one thing, I think it's a Providence flying into a Venator. I think that's what it was. I forget what it was exactly right now, but then they like kind of break up, and it like I actually started laughing at that because it just looks so ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, the space battle itself is pretty over the top in a kind of cool way, but it's just like you zoom out and there's like a bajillion ships. Like I counted.
No Lucre Hulks. It's all just Providences and Venators.
Yeah. It's the same too when like Anakin gets the little task force to go like perform reconnaissance, and it's like 20 Venators.
Yeah.
It's like reconnaissance.
At least with the first volume, even though it was all acclimators, you get like the thing of them landing on Mon Calamari and they're actually doing something. There seems to be more thought into like how they're arrayed. With the Battle of Coruscant, it was literally just like
a
screen spam. It was the Rise of Skywalker fleet of Clone Wars.
To be fair, though, that is kind of what it's like in the movie as well.
Kind of, but
it's just a big brawl.
You still have the sprites probably for acclimators and stuff. Like, don't just use Venators. Give something else. But it was still fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was fun. You're right. Now that you mentioned, I do kind of miss like the different battlefields we had in the last episode. Like we get a lot of variety that's kind of missed out, and that is kind of what happens when you tell these more. I guess they're kind of longer, kind of not really. there's less pure action, which means we lose out a bit of the planetary diversity and some of the different weapons. Although we do still get some interesting stuff, but not as much, I'd say.
Yeah.
What do you think of Yoda's little mount?
Yeah, I thought that was just something he was using on that other planet at first, but no, he parked that thing on Coruscant. Just keeps it outside.
I don't know. I kind of like Yoda having a little horse. I don't remember if he has anything like that in the Clone Wars. I don't think so. He's got his little starfighter, but I don't think.
Yeah, it just seems like any kind of legged transportation is not going to be very effective on Coruscant in general. And that kind of gets back to the world building.
I like Yoda's water bending movements too, where he destroys those drop ships. I thought that was pretty cool. A little over the top, but very cool. Speaking of over the top, Anakin also gets to complete the true hockey bro look. Besides for just the new flow, he also gets his tribal tattoo.
Yep.
Which I thought was kind of fun. It was kind of cool for a little spirit journey, but I was like, really, does he need a friggin' tribal tattoo? It's like
at least he didn't get a face tattoo. He has the scar, but
he gets the scar,
and the scar does glow weirdly in some places. Or at least I think it's glowing. It's hard to tell with the intention of the art style. But
YouTube. Did you notice now on YouTube they don't call 720p HD anymore?
Yeah, I think they changed that last month.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, it's relatively recent,
y'all.
but yeah, it's
I'll say
no longer 2014.
Yeah, I remember when you had a 720p video back in the day. You were like, "Holy shit, my eyes are feasting tonight." Oh my god, the video's not square.
Yeah, now even like watching that on mobile, it's like, what is this garbage?
Yeah,
get this shit out of here.
I thought the Ithorian throat yell was pretty freaking disgusting.
Yeah.
I saw one of the Ithorians, because I forgot that's like where their throat is, and I saw one of them at Galaxy's Edge. There's like a big, one of the shops has like a huge, I guess it would be life-size Ithorian behind like kind of it's supposed to be like the shopkeeper, and he's got the mouth inside the side of the neck. It's just really friggin' nasty.
Yeah.
But imagine how many darts you could smoke at once.
What are
like at least 10 in each one, right?
I don't think that's advisable. I don't know. Maybe smoking is actually good for Thorians, and that's why they have those mouths, so they can just be hacking darts all day. But
they evolved specifically to hack as many darts as possible.
Does that phrase mean anything outside Canada?
I don't know if hacking darts or crushing darts means anything outside of Canada.
Okay.
Or bumming darts or.
But yeah, one of the players in our tabletop series, Ithorians are his absolute favorite species. In our first campaign, he played one and was just he was bellowing all the time because that basically the entire species is built around that in the Fantasy Flight Games system, where you generally they're like spec'd to be doctors, but also melee based because they can just like punch people and then shout at them.
That's where Palpatine learned it from. Where he got the idea from Revenge of the Sith. And he jumps over the table and starts screeching.
What did you think the chances were that Grievous was just going to try to kill Palpatine when he was mouthing off that much? It's like, I know you're trying to get captured, but
yeah,
Grievous doesn't seem like he's in on this.
Yeah, no, he's not. And that's kind of covered in the Revenge of the Sith novelization as well. Like, Grievous has no clue what's going on because Grievous is basically just like, he's like another Darth Maul kind of. He's just like a mad animal. And they use him as one. The Revenge of the Sith novelization 2 talks about how they use Grievous and they make him so terrifying so people will hate aliens and robots.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. We should read that book soon. I've been kind of wanting to get back into that. What was I going to say?
We've been talking about that one pretty much since we started the podcast.
Yeah, I know. I like how Palpatine says to the Jedi that they'll long be remembered in the archives of the Jedi Order.
Yeah, when Shaak Ti
he's like, that shit's gonna be around for about 3 days. And then Shaak Ti is not captured. She's just kind of left there. which is kind of weird.
Yeah, she's like tied up in the ceiling,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I guess, a thing they do now.
Because doesn't he take her? Is it Shakti? He takes the invisible hand.
Yeah, she was the one that was killed in the cut scene.
So that's what I was expecting. I was expecting her to be on the invisible hand with Palpatine. I mean, yeah, with Palpatine and Grievous.
That was probably changed when they cut that scene. Because they were probably going to use it to explain it, and they probably just like quickly animated her tied into the ceiling. Because that did feel a little bit tacked on. And then, as we know, she only ends up actually dying in Force Unleashed. So I think there's like 3 or 4 places that her and Even Peel
she dies
die
twice in Revenge of the Sith, because she also dies. She's got another scene where she dies at the Jedi Temple.
Yeah. But that was also cut, so...
Yeah, exactly. What did you think of Mace Windu using Force Crush? Or some Force... Like, maybe it's a Force Choke? I don't know. Like, he basically just crushes Grievous, same as Anakin kind of kills one of those Techno-Union guys.
Yeah, but Grievous is a droid, so it doesn't matter.
But, I mean, he's still alive.
Grievous is a droid, so it doesn't matter.
Wow. You're gonna get the fucking
Grievous is a droid,
canceled.
so it doesn't... No, I think it was just you can't choke people and take away their oxygen, but you can crush their rib cages.
I don't know, because Anakin's move is supposed to be like a step to the dark side when he kills that Techno-Union guy.
Yeah, but there's a difference between crushing the rib cage and choking them. One's okay, one's not.
Is that Vergier's teachings?
Yeah, she rescued me from a Yuzon Vong world ship, and I'm just learning so much. Say hi, Vergier. Hi, everyone.
Is that why the chair, you're always complaining about how uncomfortable your chair is?
I'm not sitting on Vergier.
I'm in the embrace of pain.
Oh. No, I got rescued. It's fine.
Okay. I don't know.
I always picture the hyper chicken from Futurama with Vergier.
It's a lot. It's hard to take the NJO seriously when you have to imagine all of or if you imagine that all of Vergier's stuff is actually translated and she's just fucking
squawking,
like, making chicken sounds the whole time.
They should make. They're gonna make a live action NJO movie series, obviously, at some point, because NJO is fantastic. But I think they should just have Vergier be played by a chicken. So there's all these serious conversations that just a chicken. So there's all these serious conversations that happen, and then they get into like the especially with Traitor, and it's like Jason tied up, embrace of pain, and he's acting like, "Why are you saying all this? What do you mean?" And then it's just a chicken like squawking around the room, laying an egg or something.
It's like, so you're saying it's the intention, not the actual force power that matters.
So you're saying I can get a $5 fill up at KFC?
She cries and it reanimates like a chicken wing. That'd be a really funny but a very, very niche video to make.
A lot of costume design and set design to go into a 3-second bit.
Yeah. And there'd be like 10 people on the internet who'd appreciate it.
All right, so any final thoughts before we get to questions on our Clone Wars adventure here?
Kashyyyk still sucks in this. We get a 2-second shot of Kashyyyk, and it's still boring Kashyyyk.
Yeah.
Not Epic Tree Village Kashyyyk. It's like Kashyyyk's kind of just a lake with a tree next to it.
Yeah, and there's like grassy plains and stuff.
Yeah.
They really did drop the ball, I think, on the environment design in this volume.
Yeah, I agree, and enemy designs as well. What did you think about the whole arm thing? Like, because Anakin, you know, he's kind of, there's kind of this prophecy on this world that this thing will lose an arm, and then the arm will be used to destroy those who took the arm, but it will become too much, and it'll kill everything that he loves. Kind of like Anakin and Padme. It's not really his physical arm; it's more just like his power. And then later, they rescue all the creatures, and they've been horribly misformed, and then they also have this kind of they have kind of like a gun on their end of their arm.
Yeah, mega cannons. They rip them off to be like Anakin.
Yeah, and then Anakin Anakin kind of loses his mechanical arm to kind of save them from this thing, but then he still does this really dark side shit, and he just crushes this Techno Union guy. The rest of the episode ends off pretty darkly. Like, he's in a bad place at the end. And I guess, is that supposed to mean that like the arm is not the real issue? The arm is just kind of representative of the dark side. Like,
yeah, the arm was a metaphor for loss.
Yeah.
So
yeah, maybe he thought by losing his mechanical arm, like, it would solve everything, but it really is really a lot less epic than that.
Yeah. Like, I think Anakin is just, you see that he's a violent, angry dude, and that's just how Anakin be.
Yep. But yeah, I enjoyed this episode generally. I'm not sure whether I liked it more than Volume 1. After watching it, I thought I did, but I do kind of miss the random one-off stuff. I miss a lot of the creativity, so I kind of like some of the storylines. I'm gonna say, I think in total I do like it a little less than Volume 1. What about you?
I actually like it a bit more, mostly because of the Anakin and Obi-Wan relationship being better. I think in terms of the action, this one isn't quite as good. Like, I do like a lot of the Grievous stuff more than anything that happened in the first one, but the general, like, clone versus droid fighting felt a bit worse, and there was a bit more just weird random shit happening. But the Anakin and Obi-Wan relationship is much better, and that, I think last time I described this as like Star Wars tequila, where watching it all at once was a bit too much, and then, but like, or just because it's pure action all the time, whereas this one felt a little bit like that. So I think if I were to watch them how they initially aired, like as the little sections, I probably would have liked Volume 1 more, but if I had to pick one to watch like all the way through like this, I think I enjoyed this one better. So
yeah, and the Mace Windu stuff was really just kind of the same stuff from the first episode. Again, I was even wondering whether the animations might have been copied over, because
I think they were. The multi-punch really fast.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I think that's it. We've got a few questions we want to read. You guys, as always, can email us your questions or your comments about whatever we're covering on a current episode, or just generally to tapcaftransmissions@gmail.com. And as a reminder, next time we will be covering our first Star Wars canon book, right? Alphabet Squadron?
Yes.
So yeah, that'll be fun. You can, so email us your thoughts on that. You've got a week to read it. Let me just check for questions. So Joel says, with the 2008 Clone Wars being an official reboot of canon in many ways and becoming a true official reboot with TCW, did it signal a shift in how Star Wars stories are being told, with new and younger authors like Claudia Gray taking the lead in building the new canon timeline? Are we seeing shifts in tone, story preferences, and overall direction? I know some of the newer authors I mentioned come from more fantasy background. Others like Zahn and Stackpole came from more sci-fi backgrounds. There's a shift in vision. I don't know if that's really, if the 2008 Clone Wars is emblematic of that. I don't know. I've noticed a bit of a shift in tone, personally, but it's hard to tell whether that's due to authors specifically, or like just direction from on high, or the type of stories that are being written right now. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of like what was big in the 90s versus what's kind of big now. And I think there was a bigger shift even within Star Wars from thinking of itself more as like trying to sell science fiction novels in the 90s to being more on the fantasy side as we got towards like NJO and then Legacy of the Force, Dark Nest Crisis. And a lot of the people who were taking the lead in the 90s were also, or even since then in Legends before the reboot, were also fantasy authors at the time too. Yeah. And were a mix of fantasy and science fiction. Like Timothy Zahn has...
Yeah, Michael Stackpole too.
Yeah, because I think Michael Stackpole, Drew Karpyshyn did Baldur's Gate and that kind of stuff before Star Wars, or around each other. But like Timothy Zahn has the Conquerors trilogy, which is sci-fi, but then also has the Dragon something. series, which was after he started doing Star Wars stuff, but was fantasy. And then again, you get towards like Fate of the Jedi, and you had more fantasy elements like Abeloth, which probably would have stuck out as being even weirder had they come in earlier. But there's always been a bit of a difference in Star Wars stories just based on who's writing what, because you can get even within the earliest, like absolute earliest, or not early, like still 90s, but you have on the far more fantasy side, you have Courtship of Princess Leia, but then you also have the opposite.
Totally a fantasy novel.
Yeah. It's pure fantasy, a little bit of like sci-fi because ships. But then on the opposite end of that spectrum, you have the Black Fleet Crisis, which is exactly what I was gonna say. As hard sci-fi as Star Wars kind of gets. And like we still have some of those authors that are still around in Star Wars, like Timothy Zahn, who's doing the same kind of stuff that he was, James Luceno, who's doing the same kind of stuff that he was since NJO. But some of these newer, younger authors do come from more fantasy backgrounds, but there's also the types of sci-fi we get are different now than what you'd get in the 90s. So,
I mean, we're about to read Barbara Hambly, or soon anyway, when we get to Children of the Jedi, and I think she did a lot of fantasy stuff. So, yeah, I don't think you can tie it exactly to that. It's just, you're right, I think it is more of a reflection of what is popular right now. The story's just been different as well.
And as far as like the difference in tone from Clone Wars to Clone Wars, this show was always intended more of like action-oriented, quick vignettes, because telling deep stories that people are going to be able to track and remember when you have 2 minutes a week almost, that's not going to track very well. Whereas with the Clone Wars, you have still some of that action, but you have more time to develop the stories. And because it is like they're both intended for a younger audience generally than a lot of the books, that influences some stuff. But yeah. I know I just talked a lot there. Sorry.
No, it's cool. And the comment is right though as well. Like the later Clone Wars is definitely like a decanonization, or not a it's just a different approach to the same thing. Like that's definitely, if you were gonna say one is more canon according to George Lucas, it would obviously be the later one. And even the way like the Clone Wars was heading before, like we would have seen something similar with what happened in season 7. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what would have happened in Legends. So like the Siege of Mandalore, and that is kind of where we know where Anakin and Obi-Wan were right before the Battle of Coruscant, and this is clearly a different approach to that. You know what I mean? Because we see where they are explicitly in here as well. So yeah, thank you very much for the question. Do you want to read the next one?
One more point I want to make on that is that there was an intentional shift in how they were handling canon around 2008 with the Clone Wars. Part of it is just that the Clone Wars is, I think Dave Filoni describes it as the most George Lucas Star Wars we have in terms of screen time. So there was a lot that George obviously had say in that kind of chose the direction that everything would go in, and then other stuff got filled in, kind of like what he did with the prequels, and that was always going to step on some toes. The bigger change as far as like how canon was being handled was that this was the introduction of the story group, and they weren't planning a reboot at that time. And I think with any kind of movies that would have been planned, a reboot of some kind would have happened.
Totally.
But they were working more on making sure that different properties did work together rather than sticking with the pure hierarchy of like games that are Infinity's games, novels, movies, like the tiers of canon. And so there was probably still going to be some retcons with that, but it was more about not having, it was when they were really solidifying the idea that when Star Wars properties are released, they are taking place in the same universe rather than just being whatever the license holder is doing and then trying to fit it together, like you see with Marvel books or with Marvel comics versus the DC or Dark Horse comics versus the books. But yeah, that's all for that.
No, that's a great point there. I mean, we had a lot of questions about the canon, so that's a good, I think, a good comment for us to talk about there. Next we have, let me just pull it. Oh, I gotta sneeze. Hold on. Oh, I love this new mic. I got to mute that right as I was sneezing. Sorry, I accidentally closed the page. Do you have the next question up?
Yeah, this one is from Torin. Still love the show. I want to defend Anakin's voice actor since you guys aren't fans of the direction they took him in Volume 1 before you guys tackle Volume 2. I really like how young and whiny he sounds in the early episodes since it's supposed to take place right after AOTC, where he's still a kid and pretty whiny in that movie. Never really sat right with me that he's so young in Episode 2, and then fully grown adult like we see in Rots by the Battle of Christophsis. I would have liked more even transition.
Yeah, the Clone Wars could have been longer, for sure, I think.
Yeah, and I think they kind of justify it with a bit of a time jump between Episode 2 and the start of the Clone Wars series. But it's also just like budgeting. They don't want to make another model for Anakin's hair.
I mean, the Clone Wars is what, like 3 years in total?
Yes.
Yeah, so it could have been longer because there is. I mean, war does obviously change a person, but especially because like kind of the legend of the Clone Wars too. It's like it's a bad war, but like there've been I guess it is the most recent war in like 1,000 years too. But
yeah, well, considering how much it shapes the galaxy. Even compared to the Galactic Civil War, like it causes the Galactic Civil War. You'd think, like, I think they should have gone at least 5 years, maybe even 10. Like the original timeline kind of makes more sense to me.
Agreed.
But
yeah, I think a 10-year war would make a lot of sense because then it's like the galaxy is just really tired of fighting. Then you kind of understand even more why like a big kind of, why an authoritarian can kind of easily insert themselves. But yeah.
And the second part of this question... Oh, do you have more to add?
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
One question I have for you is that, given that The Clone Wars is probably the highest profile piece of Star Wars media decanonized by Disney, where do you think the animated shows in general fit into Star Wars? Which ones would you recommend fans check out, and were there any disappointments? Where would you like to see Star Wars animations go in the future?
I really like what they've done with the Clone Wars Rebels pipeline, and it seems pretty obvious we're going to get a Rebels sequel. I really like how... season 7 of the Clone Wars like was more explicitly tied in with like expanded universe. I mean, new expanded universe material. So I'd like to see that moving forward.
Yeah,
like there's no reason why shows like animated shows have to be treated like they were in Legends, where the Clone Wars is its own thing. I'd really like if because this is why there's supposed to be a story group handling everything now. I would really like if the future television shows really highly integrated expanded universe material.
And that, again, doesn't mean that there wouldn't be inconsistencies. It's just the idea that it's going to be like tied in. Like the Thrawn novels were very tied into Rebels. There was the downside of that, which again, we bring up a lot of like Timothy Zahn kind of being written into a corner on what he could do with Thrawn within a few months space. But Thrawn definitely survives that. So we'll see what it means in the future. But I think everyone needs to watch Droids and Ewoks, and the rest is... No, I agree with you. I really like the style of what they do with the Clone Wars and Rebels, and I think that's kind of the top tier of Star Wars shows.
For sure.
Again, haven't given Resistance much of a chance, but I kind of want to, and I feel like definitely earlier on, the really old ones like Droids and Ewoks were just sort of...
They were just kid
most
shows,
of their
really.
own thing that isn't tied in at all. And I even with kid shows and stuff, I like when stuff's tied more into the universe as well, and I'd like that to continue being what they do.
Yeah, like what I'd like to see is, and I think they can do, is I want an overall story that books and shows and whatever else are working together to tell. Funny enough, we got a lot of that in like the Rogue One era. Like I felt like Rebels was jiving really well with what was going on with Rogue One, and I felt like the other material that was coming out at the time kind of all worked together really well. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in whatever comes out in the future.
Yeah, and like you're saying, Rogue One is the best Star Wars movie. I agree.
Okay. I think we got another email while we were recording. We got one from Justin who says...
Again, you don't need to email the show. You're one of the co-hosts.
Mr. Justin T, I will not let him respect you like that. He says, asks how we're dealing with the Rakghoul outbreak. We've both been in our chairs for 3 years now. I don't think we've noticed any difference.
Yeah, my lifestyle is basically what it was before. Just I see Dana less, but we're moving in together, so that even that'll be different.
If the EU... Hold on, sorry. I think we kind of covered... Second, do you think if the EU were extending the Galactic Civil War before I'd gone with the Han Solo trilogy idea of what the galaxy was like, Would we see the same amount of warlords? I'll just answer this one quickly because we're running out of time, and maybe you can do the same. I think we would have just seen more kind of independent states because we get like the CSA and others, and that's kind of downplayed in like the post-Endor stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's an extent to which the warlord fiefdoms would probably lash out and take over some of the smaller stuff, which we actually get a little bit of with like Zinj and the CSA. But I like when there's those kind of semi-autonomous areas within the Empire that's kind of put forward as like, oh, these used to be these independent areas that were adjacent to the Republic, and the Republic was the big power, and maybe some of them were associated in different levels, but then the Empire just kind of started cracking down on them. But
it makes a lot of sense in like the Outer Rim too, as well. Like,
yeah,
the Empire wouldn't want to expand themselves if it's just such shit space. It's like, yeah, they got like a dog over here that's kind of cool that we wouldn't mind taking, but besides that, like,
yeah, I don't know why Gmail isn't loading for me.
So there's a couple other questions. What element would Isard be a bender of if she was an avatar? She could be a water bender because of the icy blue of her eyes, yet also a fire bender because of the burning red. Well, I think.
Wait. I don't think they ever addressed what color her eyes were in the books. What are you talking about?
It's only a brief footnote in the character encyclopedia.
Okay, I'll have to look that up because I really thought it was never talked about.
So you have to be a firebender because they're both different kinds of fire. It's like a cold fire, whatever that means, and a fiery rage.
Well, it's like the analgesic cream, like Icy Hot, where her eyes just squirt icy hot at people, and like, wow, this is really numbing me, but it's also tingling. What an experience!
Don't put those on your balls, from what I've heard.
From what you've heard.
Or do and email us and tell us what happens. I don't do that. Fourth, how do you think the 2003 Clone Wars influenced the Clone Wars that most of us know and love? I don't really think it did a whole lot, to be honest.
Not really.
No. I mean, we get like there's a few direct examples, like the mission to Mon Cala is one that I can think of the most, but
yeah.
So I think that's all we have time for today. Is there anything you want to end off with, Corey?
See, when you say that, I just get this feeling in my stomach that like, no, he's gonna cut me off, but I'm the one that's streaming this. I'm the one with all the buttons. This is abusive, is what this is. But I
left Discord for a second there. I don't know if it.
I didn't get the sound, so.
Damn it! Would have been really funny.
It wasn't.
Edit one in. Okay.
No, like it's abusive. I don't like this. It's mean.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And coarse and rough, and it gets everywhere.
Okay. Yesterday, I was driving with Kelsey, and she was like, "I don't really like the beach." She's like, "I'm not a big fan of sand," and I was like, "Yeah, me neither. It's coarse and it's rough, and it gets everywhere." And she's like, "Yeah, I agree." Like, she doesn't know the quote.
What a loser.
I was like, "Oh, this is epic. If only some of my nerd friends online were here."
Just in the car, just call me and Charlie.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what just happened. But yeah, I think I'm good.
No, me too.
So again, next week we will be talking about Alphabet Squadron. That's going to be over on Mr. EckhartsLadder's channel. In about 10 minutes, we're going to be live over on youtube.com/ECKSTOOX2, the gaming channel featuring both us and Charlie, playing some Worms WMD alongside Mark from the Templin Institute and Julia. So that should be a fun time. Come out and have some laughs. Called
Convincing Charlie he has worms. If you want to watch that, I'll put a link in the.
But yeah. So have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
There's nothing else you want to add?